The BIQU Thunder is the latest challenger in large format 3D printers, and it includes wireless one-click cloud printing. So how does it stack up? Recently, I reviewed some of the new generation of large format 3D printers that build on the success of the original CR-10 and clones such as the TiVo Tornado. The CR-10S Pro from Creality and the Artillery 3 X1 are both much more polished machines than those original designs, and the BIQU Thunder is the same but with some very novel features. Let's start by looking at the specs, the unboxing, assembly, as well as the first prints. The BIQU Thunder, also known as Big Tree Tech, is a large format 3D printer that comes in standard as well as advanced versions. There's a range of great features that they both share, but the main differences for advanced are quiet stepper motor drivers, Wi-Fi connectivity with cloud printing, automatic power shutdown, and a proper filament sensor. This review is of the advanced version, and it's a large format printer with a 300 by 300 by 400 mm build volume. It has auto bed leveling with a clip-on temporary probe, a soft peel-off magnetic platform, as well as either filament runout or a filament motion tracker. It does have power out protection, and it does lift the nozzle to avoid leaving any marks. The power supply is a certified Meanwell, more on that one later on. And for the advanced model, one of the big selling features is connecting by Wi-Fi to the MyMiniFactory app. It's also worth mentioning that it has a 32-bit based mainboard. Unboxing and installation was a really good experience for me. The instruction manual was really well written, easy to read, and everything went together as you would hope. After I had finished assembly, I peeled off that satisfying sticker and connected the temporary auto bed leveling sensor. There's a little plug on top near the fan, and then it slots over the nozzle, and then you start the procedure from the LCD. It is very slow, but it's not like you're going to do it before every print. It goes around probing a grid, and when it's complete taking its measurements, you'll get a message on the LCD screen and the values will be saved for your printing. There's an automated LCD menu for loading filament, and it happens really fast, more on that later too. One thing that's welcome is a full-size SD card that's highly accessible. Besides 2 test prints on the SD card, there's also a bunch of videos to help you with various calibration, some user guides to help you with the same thing, a copy of Cura, as well as a slicing profile for Cura. I started the simple calibration cube on the SD card, adjusting the Z offset with the baby stepping option right from the LCD menu. Pretty slick. When that printed okay, I printed the benchmark, which was an oversized benchy, and I had a pretty big failure there. I started the print again, and the same thing happened again, although not quite as bad this time. Now, my first impressions were very good on this printer. As I put it together, I could tell that it had been well designed, well made, and seemed very polished. So I was surprised when the first test prints didn't turn out. I had 3 persistent issues that plagued me as I reviewed this printer, but 2 out of the 3 did eventually get fixed, so I'll describe what happened as I go. Now, the white filament that came with this printer is good at hiding a multitude of sins. The test cube looks okay with no significant problems, but the benches clearly had an issue, failing at the same point each time with some missed extrusion. My next prints were a set of poly panels designed by Make Anything. I'd like to build up a set of these as I review various printers, and I figure they are great for testing detail and tolerances with a satisfying snap fit. Apart from some errant little strings and extrusions, these ones printed great and fit together as they should. Next up, I loaded up some parts from the Maximagapod project that I'm slowly chipping away at, and I loaded up some silver X3D PLA to match the parts that I had already printed on other printers thus far. During these prints, the extrusion issue kicked in intermittently, giving me a vague message on the LCD. The printer would be sat there paused with this message, and I could resume the print, but most of the time it happened soon after. I changed nozzles and checked all of the fittings, but it still wouldn't go away. Now, the loading speed for the filament on the refuel option on the LCD is crazy fast, and as it hits the hot nozzle, it tends to skip and grind on the filament. Keen to understand and eliminate the problem, I disassembled the extruder. The filament sensor is quite interesting, with a rubber-coated encoder that turns against the idler bearing. I assume the output for the extruder is compared against what actually is measured on this encoder, and that way it can tell if the filament has jammed, is not moving fast enough, or has simply run out. I found that mine was full of filament dust from this dodgy loading procedure. So I cleaned this, adjusted the spring to grip the filament as tight as possible, and changed the nozzle for good measure. And on the next print, I got the message, but it was okay. This time the filament had run out, so it was working as it was meant to. I used the menu to change the filament and the print completed properly. I was glad to have fixed the first issue, but another one started to raise its head. These surface artifacts are so prominent and the worst I've seen on any 3D printer. Now they're usually down to stepper motor drivers, but this has TMC 2208s, so it shouldn't be down to that. If you're not sure what I'm talking about with surface artifacts, compare the same STL printed on this printer versus an identical part printed on another printer previously. By this stage, I had been in contact with support for a couple of weeks, trying all sorts of suggestions. This included checking the belt tension, checking and adjusting the VREFs, but all of those were fine. To give the best data possible, I printed out a calibration cube, swapped over to a complete spare hot end when they asked me to, and then printed another one with the same G-code. As you can see, it didn't fix the problem at all. I figured I better push forward with the review, and I printed out this enormous 400mm tall vase. And guess what? The artifacts were gone. A vase this size still took around 12 hours to print, but fortunately the result is very good. It's got nice, even extrusion, and it feels pretty strong too. Now support was very friendly and helpful, but we weren't really getting anywhere, so I thought I'd throw it out to the community on the Facebook group for this printer. Several friendly members replied with great suggestions, pointing to the slicer profile. Remember, this was the one that came on the SD card, and I had made this known to support right at the start. I switched to Simplify 3D, using a standard CR-10 profile, but only changing the retraction from 8 to 6 to match what was in Cura, and when I printed the cube again, the artifacts were cured. I'm glad this was fixed, but it was frustrating to see that it was something so simple all along, and thanks to those people in the community who helped me out. Next up, I loaded this print-in-place mesh, and I decided to test some other filaments, starting with PETG. This model should have been good for testing bridging and cooling performance, but it didn't complete the first time with this strange error, despite no power interruptions at my house. When trying to remove it from the print bed, several huge splits appeared in the bed. I eventually got the PETG off and started the file again, but I had the same problem. I watched Devon from Make Anything's review, and he had the exact same problem when testing PETG on his model as well, including the cracked bed. Next up was ABS, with the same model, and guess what? I had the same error. Now I'd found so far that the bed heated very slowly. It's a little bit cold here at the moment, but 15 minutes to get to 80 degrees Celsius seems an excessive amount of time. With that in mind, it seems plausible to me that this power supply is on the edge of what it can supply in terms of current. I did ask support about this, but I've yet to hear back. Just as I was finishing the edit for this video, I received a reply. My heating is obviously slower than what they've measured. My room temperature is 15 degrees and I definitely don't have an air conditioner pointing anywhere near the hot bed. And I definitely have not altered the wiring of this printer in any way at all. If you're also having this problem, you might want to try turning off the shutdown function. Finally, I decided to do some test printing with some TPU. Fortunately, the extruder had no issues with this flexible material, printing with no changes other than turning off the heated bed. Clearly, it could do with some more slicer optimization, but the baseline is there and the performance was good on this printer. With the slicer issue fixed, I figured it was time to do another test print to show off what the surface quality was really like. There's a bunch of these print-in-place swords on Thingiverse, and I think the design is really awesome. In my opinion, the surface quality is quite good, the only artifacts being those introduced by Simplify 3D as it changes layers. Now my final test print was for the cloud printing from the MyMiniFactory app. Now I've actually made a previous video testing this through Octoprint on another printer, so I limited myself to one print here and it confirmed what I found previously. After you've connected the BIQU Thunder to your home Wi-Fi, you link the MyMiniFactory app on your phone, and then when you browse and find a suitable model, you're able to send it directly to the printer. You do have a limited interface for selecting which files print and also scaling them, but there's no control at all over any other slicing settings. You have to assume that it's set up for PLA because there's no options otherwise. Every print, just like this one, will print with a raft and support whether it's needed or not. Now, in my opinion, the print quality on this is pretty good and it brings out the full creepiness of the model, but it's also worth mentioning that this printed extremely slow, just under 8 hours for this moderate size print. I've shown in my testing before that this system does work, but is a little bit flawed depending on the model. When I printed a Benchy previously on another printer using the MyMiniFactory app, it added a raft but also support, which completely ruined the print. It's definitely a welcome feature for this printer, but it certainly needs more development before it's foolproof. I've got a lot of hours of printing here with all different types of files, so it's time to do my summary, starting with the pros. Overall, this thing is a really polished machine, really well made and really well put together. The assembly process was really nice, and I think the LCD is quite attractive as well. The quiet stepper motor drivers are welcome, although like the CR-10S Pro and the Artillery 3D X1, the cooling fans are probably a little bit noisier than you would like. The filament sensor, when it's not clogged, has great potential. It'll pick up jams instead of just a filament running out like other printers will. I also like the thought that went into the auto power off for this printer. You can turn it off in the menu if you don't like it, but a simple feature that minimizes electricity usage is welcome in my books. Once I fixed the slicer issue, I'd have to say that the print quality was quite good on this printer, and I'm pleased that they've included some sort of ABL, even though it's a little bit clunky compared to something like a BL Touch. The inclusion of Wi-Fi is a great feature, because even if the current software chain needs more development, that can be done for free and the hardware will be in place on this printer, ready to benefit from that. When I tested for it, I was very glad that this printer had thermal runaway protection. These printer companies are starting to include something that should be mandatory on every printer. Speaking of firmware, they have released a source for Marlin 2.0 publicly, and it would be remiss of me not to mention the great community offering help for new users of this printer. Now onto some negatives, and there were two big problems that eventually I managed to fix, but there were some other niggling problems with this printer. Firstly, it would be my personal preference to have some sort of manual extruder lever. Without one, you're forced to rely on the LCD, and if it's not perfect, like in this case being too fast, it's going to introduce problems like stripping filament, which leads to clogs and jams. This at least should be easy for them to fix with a firmware update that slows down the loading speed so things aren't moving so fast and then stripping. That slicing profile on the SD card was a real pain, and if you're using this printer, probably ditch it straight away and find another profile on a community group for free. Now my final issues were both related to the bed. Firstly, I don't really like this magnetic flexible base. Apart from the fact that it cracked, which is a great concern, it doesn't feel very nice to use. It's just a little bit too stiff. When you put it back on, it doesn't feel like it's really going back flat again. I found I had to put down one side and then smooth it across just to get it to stick nice and flat and avoid having to level again. I also had the issue with the PETG sticking too well, although it did seem to work fine with PLA. During my prints, I also found I had inconsistent first layer heights, despite there being a mechanical switch for the homing instead of the ABL sensor. If I stuck with the same material and temperatures, it seemed to be fine, but as soon as I changed, I had quite big variations, which caused the nozzle to sometimes slam into the surface, and as you can see, it's taken quite a beating during this review. Fortunately, there should be a pretty easy fix for this, because you've already got magnets built into the bed, which means you could buy a plate from something like a Wham Bam system and install it straight on. You would just need a printed part to move the Z end stop to bring it into the correct range. My final issue that I didn't manage to get on top of was the performance when I raised the temperature of the heated bed. Overall, I feel that this is a pretty sound printer. Two of those issues have been solved, so that really leaves us with the bed and the power supply. If you're planning to print primarily with PLA, which you're forced to do anyway if you're using the MyMiniFactory app, then it's going to be a pretty safe option because it worked quite well with this setup for all of my prints. The other thing that makes it enticing is the price. If you shop around, for instance at the time of recording, AliExpress has this in advanced mode for only $350 US. That makes it significantly cheaper than its competitors, and you'll still have quite a bit of change left over after you fix these couple of issues that I've experienced in this video. So that's my thoughts, but what about yours? Do you think that cheaper price lets it overcome my gripes, or is it still a little bit too compromised? That's going to bring this one to an end. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy 3D printing.
G'day, it's Michael again. If you liked the video, then please click like. If you want to see more content like this in future, click subscribe and make sure you click on the bell to receive every notification. If you really want to support the channel and see exclusive content, become a patron. Visit my Patreon page. See you next time.